Welcome, 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 everybody. It's Dave Cooper, and this is our expert interview and our once-a-month presentation with Greg Ugalde joining us. Greg, thanks so much for coming on the show today. If you are just joining us, please hit that like and share button. We are live on 3 locations, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. Please hit those like and share button and join us. That's the only way we can spread the word about how we're changing innovation in construction and moving the ball forward to build healthier homes, to build homes with offsite construction, and homes that can help the affordable crisis that we're going through right now and the deficit in homes that we have. So, Greg, thanks for joining us today.
Great to be here as always, Dave.
I love it. So today's kind of a different day for us. We actually, luckily enough, have a special guest joining us today. And I think this is going to be a lot of fun. So, you know, and excuse me, I mean, I'm sitting outside on a bench in South Carolina, and our special guest is from the Carolinas as well. And she said it's not even hot yet. I feel like I'm sweating bullets already. But why don't you tell us a little bit about Judy and who we're bringing on today, Greg? Because I think this is so important.
Sure. Thanks, Dave. And what we've decided to do is it's so important. You know, we hear from Devin Perry, who's our outstanding ringleader in the offsite construction building systems area, as well as Tiffany McCall, who is our current chair of building systems within the Federation. But we have great leaders like Judy, who's joining us today. So Judy Dinelle, she's currently our associate member committee chair. And she comes with a very strong background. She's also chaired Professional Women in Building. And she's instrumental with our Builder 20 clubs, which is when we get builders together to compare notes and put out a better product. Leading suppliers she's involved with. And the things, though, that I like to share about my good friend is that, you know, her leadership style it's contagious. She's like a magnet for our members. Whatever she does, I remember as BuildPAC chair, I walked into one of her meetings, and I think I left with almost $20,000 from one meeting for BuildPAC. And I mean, that's the kind of leadership that she brings. And the other side that many people don't get to see is that she gives back in athletics, something that she's been involved with. And she's a very high-level umpire. And it's fascinating how she spends her time and how much she's helpful. So I wholeheartedly am thankful for Judy joining us today. Here's Judy Dinelle.
Yeah, welcome, Judy. Let's bring Judy in. Hey, Judy, I'm going to move you guys around a little bit. There we go. So Judy Dinelle, I mean, what an introduction that is. I mean, let's think about this. So you were the 2018 chair, Professional Women in Building. I love it. You know, that's a virtual high five if I get it the right way for you. I think that is awesome. And what I think which really was impressed me when we started speaking prior to the show is just like Greg is a builder. You used to run framing crews. You started off as boots on the ground, running framing crews, not just being a framer. You were that as well, but you were also running framing crews. And I think that's so valuable and so pertinent today to be able to lead things into the future, such as the Women in Building program, and also being a chair that you are now. Because being a leader, you really have to understand what it takes from the ground up. And that's what's, I think, so important about what you have done and just learning a little bit about your background. I'm not going to jump into it more because I could just spill the beans everywhere. Why don't you take a moment and let's tell the world about who Judy Dinelle is and learn a little bit about your story.
Well, we'll try to keep it a little bit simple, but thank you very much for the invite to come onto your show, Dave. It's a very important process of our industry now, and especially in these times. And of course, Greg Ugalde is very instrumental in everything that we do, and I love partnering with him. He's also a fantastic leader, and he's brought us into bigger and higher heights within NAHB. So thank you to both of you for allowing me to be on the show and sharing some of my experiences and promoting the associates and PWB and everything else involved with NAHB in the industry. So I was born and raised in New England. And like I said, I worked with my cousins down in Florida and framing crews and learned how to sheet roofs and build houses, do concrete, do tie beams, walk on tiny ledges 3 stories in the air, and set trusses. My favorite part was always being the peak person and flying with a crane and having a lot of fun doing all that. Had crews underneath me that we learned and we taught. I used to, take them to HVA events, and we learned how to do siding and different things like that. So it was always a great introduction in my life to come and get involved in this. And it was a builder that got me involved with the building industry of the Home Builders Association. So from there, it moved on to onto the positions that I am now, and it was great. I mean, I decided I wasn't going to wear my tool belt anymore, but I still wanted to be involved in the industry, and went into sales and have gradually worked myself up into the position of a building ambassador with 84 Lumber, in which I'm the liaison between all home builders associations and 84. So it's been a great transition when it comes to that part of my industry life.
Yeah, yeah, no, it really has. I mean, it's amazing that, I mean, that's a whole lot of different positions that you went through, right? At some point, we
Yes.
all get to a point where strapping on a tool belt, for some, just like it's time to move into the next phase. And not only did you move into the next phase, I mean, you went to the top of the next phase, which I think is great. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your current role, with as an associate, on the
Sure.
committee chair, and tell us a little bit about what Associate Member Appreciation Month and all these great things that you have coming up, because I don't personally think that a lot of builders and a lot of suppliers understand how much you do for us at the NAHB and what the importance is of the associate members.
Okay. Yeah, sure. I would love to, because it's a big part of what we do. And we're right now, I believe it's I always tell people that we're like that we have 84,000 members within the NHP, but only because I work for 84. It's just a great number to have. But it's really probably around the ranks of around 80,000 associate members. We roughly account for 2/3 of the membership, of the total membership for NAHB. And so associate members really are the home building industry suppliers, our service providers, product manufacturers, and we support the industry, of course, in many different capacities. And we're a vital important of the association, because without us, builders can't build, and without builders, associates can't um,
Right.
do their wares and their profession. So we know about the home building industry. We have to go. We know the codes. We know how houses are built. We know how apartments, everything, all the way to commercial, industrial, um, all bridges, tunnels, you name it. Associates are involved in that, and we support the builder. And without, like I said, it's a great marriage to have within the two. Um, we hold a lot of keys for that. We have to keep the builders informed of the different labor laws that are coming up. We have to keep them informed of the different manufacturing laws that are coming out, the new window designs, the new anything that has product, all the new designs. So it's a multitude of facets. The sales and marketing part of it, the real
Right.
estate, the lawyers like Greg, they're all associates. If you have a line of cabinetry, all that stuff, we all are. It's associates. It's 2/3 of the membership. So
Right.
if you're in the industry, you fall into one of those categories of either not a license or have a license.
Yeah, for sure. And Greg, I'll let you jump in on this as well. But I think what a lot of people really should understand is that not only as an associate member, yes, you're a supplier, but you're also the advocates for our industry as well.
Right.
You're helping us fight codes. You are following all the codes because you have to design and build, whether it's a product or a service, within those codes. So you have the product from market. So there's a lot more than just saying, hey, I'm an associate member or a supplier or a service person. There's a lot happening behind the scenes that you are doing for the builder members as well. And I think that's really where this whole collaboration comes in. And Greg, I mean, you've been a builder your whole life as well. So wouldn't you agree with that?
Yeah, you know, and it's interesting too, because the point that you're both making, it's such a fine line. You know, I draw an analogy sometime. We see builders in different time frames, they become remodelers because it's goes hand in hand and there's some synergy. But the associate members happens all the time, whether it's sales or, you know, whatever we're doing together. In my case, even doing closings and the legal work. But it's so critical. The main point here is that how we help each other and work into the future is really the key. Mm-hmm. And we have so many great associate members that's what makes our federation so strong. And you pointed out, whether it's lobbying, taking our voices to state capitals as well as Capitol Hill and DC, but it's also just the ins and outs of code awareness, product awareness, and you can see that every program we have interrelates and we interact. It's and we always work at it too, because what we find is that our work is never done. We have to keep pushing forward.
Well, and don't forget, Dave, on the other end of this stuff, on the local and the state level, on the local level, there's that point where they can't always come to national, right? But the associates work on the local level is what really drives the national level and then the state level. But the boots on the grounds on this, let's say the local on the level, they're visiting the homes and they're in the offices of all of our legislators. And they have the ear of the legislators because we're their constituents at our local level. So we can chat at them on their home ground, right in their backyard, and bring that. Then they bring that message onto the national level and help Greg and the rest of the senior officers understand what's happening on our local level at the constituent level. So it's a big plus.
It really is. And I think that's a great point, that how important the local level is, because that is, again, that's going back to the boots on the ground. That's the local level that's first to find out about things that are happening in the field, first to find out about what's happening in their states, right? It doesn't just automatically, the phone rings in Washington somewhere and everybody knows everybody's issues, right? And being involved in that. Yeah. And I think that's really, really important to point out. And this is where a lot of the associate members and the builders can interact with each other. They can talk about issues that they're having. They can talk about promotions that they need to do to gain awareness for whatever it is, offsite construction, their products, whatever the case is. And I agree, that's super, super important. But one of the other things that you guys are also working on, and I know, Greg, you work on this at the national level as well, is the workforce development side of this. And I think this is a big part, right? Because we're all struggling with workforce right now out in the field. And Judy, you want to talk a little bit about the associate committee for this that's been put in place and what you guys are doing?
Sure. This year we've launched. It was one of my projects that I wanted to get to start as chair, and that was a workforce development task force. So some of our first initiatives that we're coming through is we're going to start doing some virtual tours of different associate, either manufacturing plants, component plants, or sales, or every facet that the associates are interested in. We need to get those, either the children that are coming up, the students that are coming up, or the industry of people that are out of jobs and need jobs and are looking for a change from their job into a different thing. It's not just saying to someone that you're going to come into the building industry and strap on a tool belt and go to work doing that, even though trades are like 43%, I think it is, make up the 43% are subcontractors and specialty trade contractors within our member consensus. And but what we're trying to do is do a virtual tour, like I could give a tour of 84 lumber, or Dave you could give a tour of one of the component plants. And it's a different style of, I'm talking to Dave Cooper, who wants a job within our industry, but he does not want to frame a house. Well, you could design a house. You could design a faucet. You could design a toilet. You could design a new electrical system, an HVA clean air system, and then take it from the birth there, and then do little snippets afterwards on how that new sink or that new faucet gets birthed all the way to putting it into the house, showing how the plumber puts it in or the trade professional does their job once they receive that line. So it's going to be a whole process. And working with conjunction with HBI and getting their videos along with our videos is going to open up a whole new world for those coming into our industry, and open up new jobs and new avenues where everybody's looking for for people now. We need employees really bad. I'll go back to 84. I think the last I just looked at, it was like 550 people we're looking for right now across the country.
Wow.
So there's always that option too, also with it, that you can move to any part of the country you want to, with a lot of these companies that have multiple destinations of what they do. So we're really excited about launching that and getting the housing endowment introduced a little bit more in the associates and things like that. So it's gonna be a great process.
You know,
Thank
it
you for
really
asking
is.
that.
Yeah, I think that is such a great idea, because I do not believe that today's youth really knows what the options are and the possibilities are on a large enough scale. You know, I know Mike Rowe from Dirty Jobs is doing a great job getting out there and talking about all the things that people do. But we were talking a little bit, you know, even we had 3D printing on last Wednesday.
Yeah,
You
love it.
don't have to swing a hammer. You can program, and we're not talking just programming a video game or something. We're talking about programming machines that build entire houses. That to me is what amazing, and I think that's kind of what you're talking about with these videos and the programs you're looking to put in place. Is that accurate?
Yes. And it was funny, Dave. I was just telling you just a little bit on our pre show here that I was looking at Clemson University's curriculum for construction, and I think it's more than just construction, but they now have courses and graduate things for drone. And I said, oh my gosh, how good would that be to have that as a virtual tool, and how to be able to pilot drones, and because we use them all the time. I mean, realtors use them. I don't even think there's a piece of land or anything that's for sale now that has not already been droned over and given a snapshot of things like that. So it was like really cool. I said, oh wow, it's a college course now. How great is that to be able to bring that into our fold and have that say, let the kids know, hey, you could pilot a drone and have your own company and do that for the realtors or the builders or developers. I thought it was cool.
That is super cool. And we're finding a lot of the colleges now, I think Clemson's one of them, they actually have an offsite construction program.
Yes.
Right. And University of Denver, Eric Holtz is doing a big study on offsite. So it's really interesting to see a lot of the colleges taking an interest in construction. And I think that's very, very important, because if they're taking an interest, that means their students are studying it. That means people are looking at this. And there's the case studies with the housing endowment and everything that is coming together. And I think that's wonderful.
I work with Greg Zick on the NAHB student chapters level also. And we do that. I've actually been with him to conferences, the college conferences where the colleges, the teachers come and they have their own association, and you go and you can present yourself to them to let them know that, we could work in conjunction. And there's any person, any company can do that and get involved with that and help teach or spread the word on how the different companies have different, like I said, different jobs that somebody could go into, deeming that it's the building industry, but it's not necessarily just a tool belt.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So here's what's happening, everybody. We are live on 3 locations: LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. We have Judy Dinelle and we have Greg Ugalde on. Judy's been giving us an update on the associate members and how important they are. We're going to jump to a couple comments real quick, and then Judy, when we get done with the comments, I really want to hear, why is it so important for us to grow the associate members at the NAHB? It's so important to have them part of this whole process. And I have to be honest, and I told Greg this before, it wasn't until I really started getting into interviewing people and talking to people that even at a builder level, I started understanding the value of this. And that's part of this, is that education and getting it out there. So, you know, I'm eating the same pudding that everybody else is eating, and I'm learning how much people are doing. And until today, Judy, you know, I didn't know how much you were doing. And I think this is so important because it's such a big beast. And I think everybody needs to have a little piece of that in their mind to understand what you do. So let's go to some comments and see where people are joining in from. We have George Ryman. Good morning from Surefoot Foundation. Hot Phoenix, Arizona. I'm feeling the heat, man. I'm in South Carolina, but I don't think it's as hot as Phoenix. No. It might be. Hey, our current chair of the Building Systems Council, Tiffany McCall, is joining us. Good morning, Dave from York, PA. Thank you, Greg, for sharing your time and knowledge. And thank you, Judy. I'm sure she would have put that too if she knew your name at the beginning of this. So,
that's fine.
Hey, you might know these people. I think they're in your backyard. Asheville Builders Association. Do you know them? Should we put them up there?
I certainly do. That's my home. That's my home.
That's it.
That's my home, HBA. Go Asheville.
So we agree. Judy is a magnet, and we are so lucky to have her as an advocate and an amazing member. You know what? I don't care how many times you do stuff like this. When people write something like that publicly, it has to make you feel good, because that means they truly believe it. Love it, love it, love it. All right. Tiffany asks, can you address the importance of working members to members, and as a builder, encouraging your suppliers and vendors to join the association? She had a follow-up. I think she spelled what she wanted to spell. Yeah, there it is. So you want to elaborate on that a little bit, Judy?
Sure. We actually are launching during our Associates Month, which is in September next month, members doing business with members. We're bringing that back. It was we had some information at NAHB that was in our library back there, so now we're bringing that to fruition again, and we just revamped some booklets and some brieflets, and we're going to be sending out the messages to the associate members on how important it is to, one, make sure that you're renewing your membership, because just because you can't do something in person does not mean that we are not virtual. Look at us. We're on this virtual chat right now with Dave Cooper and everybody in America, and we're promoting associates. So the builders are going to understand that. We also have, maybe to digress a little bit, but right now are the awards for NAHB that are out, and the associates have their awards of Associate of the Year. But we have one that's called BEAM, which is Builders Engaging Associate Members. So all the builders and remodelers that are out there that pride themselves on how many associates that they use that are within our federation, you can win an award by putting your name into the hat and filling out the application for the BEAM Award, and it is quite spectacular. Like I said before, the associates make up 2/3 of the federation, and we can promote ourselves through the HBA virtually at this time at COVID, or virtual meetings with builders. We're also doing a virtual chat, which is like every other Tuesday. We do a virtual chat with NAHB, which puts on different professionals on how to do this either professionally, or we're putting on different committees and subcommittees to introduce all the associates to what else they can do within the federation to get their name out and to promote themselves. We all try to do business with each other, and so it's very important for associates to get going on this thing and to be a member. And if you if your membership is lapsed, we have retention groups that will call you and ask what we can do to help you. Because
Right.
as at these times it's kind of hard sometimes that you forget that you have to renew. But don't forget, because this is how we are still in business, is because of us.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Greg, I know you had some questions that we were kind of talking about. Is there anything you want to ask Judy before we move on with our programming?
It's interesting too, just to finish that thought. Our most powerful tool, bar none, is our face-to-face interaction, member to member, member to potential member. And we have proven time and time again that that personal ask, is the foundation of everything we do. There's no substitute. It's that way for Bill, that way for membership. It just across the board. And Judy, one of the things when you talk about like the curriculum that we're trying to expand, and we talked about video a little bit, but HBI, one of our organizations that we use, they create the curriculum at you mentioned the colleges, but at the high school level as well, trying to bring shop classes, teaching everybody that it's okay to think that you could work with your hands and make a great living, cut down on your student debt. You can, show up to your reunion with little debt and a house and a car and everything. And it's not a dream. It's something that you can make happen with hard work. But Judy, when you look at this offsite space and how you see the membership that you're working with, what do we see as we develop in how a lot of our members are being attracted over to this new frontier, if you will?
Well, offsite construction is definitely a big part of the future, and if people aren't looking at that now, I encourage you to start looking at it, because it is going to be the way of the future with the 3D, where you can build a house and still be the 3D. But that's not demeaning any of the trades, because obviously the trades and the associates still are a huge part of that, because building offsite is actually a lot of associates members are the ones that do the building offsite and in the factories and in behind the scenes, and the architects, the designers, and the CAD drawings, and all of that. But I think when I know that you're probably going to talk about the lumber and the material shortage that's going on right now, Greg. I know you have that coming up into one of your segments here. Uh, but if we're not looking at different ways, and the new generation coming through, we have all the we have the new generation that's coming up, that's in a hurry. They don't want to wait. They're the time set is a total different story for some of the younger generations coming up, but it's also an opportunity for more people to come into our industry and to be able to share their knowledge that they have in their minds and their education, and bring it to the forefront of what we have. And you can start, like Greg says, you don't have to be stuck with a 4-year debt or anything like that, because you can start as an apprenticeship in most companies that are in our industry, and start learning from the bottom up. Like I did not come from a building background, and I came through the ranks that way because I found it fascinating, and I thought it was going to be a great career, and it was something I would like to do. So I didn't have to go through the 4-year college or the two. I did go to
Right.
college, but it wasn't in this. But so I think that all in all, this is the future. More people are gonna want to do more computer stuff and do it, you know, that way. I don't want to say it the smart way, but it's the wave of the future is where we're going with this.
Yeah, you know what it is. I mean, look at everybody and how fast they can. This younger generation, they can type faster on their phone than I can on a keyboard.
Oh, yes.
You know? Yeah, they're so well connected, and the NAHB has so many great programs for the younger generation and their workforce development. The one name's eluding me, Greg. Maybe you know where they give the awards every year at the IBS for the young professionals in building.
The
right?
YP, yeah.
So,
YP,
and I actually moderate a room full of over 800 high school and college students and parents from all over the country, and they compete for a week. They actually start from the plan to take it through approvals to actually building, and they compete. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
And they've got the music playing, and Judy helped me with a couple of the awards last year. And I got to tell you, Judy, it's one of the most uplifting experiences, right?
Well, I'll tell you a little quick thing on that, because yes, I was just going to say that I was MC for 2 years for the Student Chapter Awards. And when I walked, I thought it was just going to be, this is the honest truth. I thought that I was just going to, you know, and I had my little talking points on my phone that was sent to me. So I just thought it was going to be one of my normal NAHB go talk to the student things with these bullet points. I opened up the room and I said, holy moly. I said, I hope this font is a lot bigger because I'm not going to be able to see this. But I was totally humbled by the amount of students that were in that award ceremony. And I really wanted to say, if any of you need a job, I have applications here with me at this present second.
Yeah.
And please, let's talk after the. I stayed. I actually missed. I was supposed to be at a couple of functions that I was chair at, and actually Greg and I were both late because we stayed. That's how much we were having fun with all the students and all the different awards. And it was just to see them light up when they won an award for this, and their path into this industry was just mind-blowing. It really was, Dave.
Yeah, for sure. I can only imagine. And how much fun is that? So Judy, if you have somewhere you want to put in the comments so everybody knows how to get a hold of you, because we actually have quite a few young people that follow what we're doing here. And even this morning, I had a conversation with somebody that's looking for a job in marketing in the home building industry. So I think there's all kinds of opportunities for anybody, not just the younger generation, to come into the home building industry. And I think if you want to put the links in there, we'll put some posts out and reshare that.
Good.
Sure, I will look at that and try to figure that out for you.
Yeah. Well, you know what? We're going to talk after the show. I can do it as well. So,
okay,
Judy, if you would just if you would hang tight,
I will.
We're going to bring you back in at the end of the show, and thank you for your time. And I'm sure some more questions are going to pop up in comments. I definitely would love to bring you back one more time. It's that important.
I thank everybody, and I look forward to coming back.
Yeah, we'll see you in just a few minutes. All right, Greg, there we had it, man. How awesome is Judy Dinelle? I have to tell you, just she was a framer, right? She we didn't talk about it, but she also umpires fast pitch softball. So she's involved with youth, you know, unless it's us old adults, but our shoulders probably can't handle that, right? Well, let's get into the meat and potatoes of some of this other stuff at the NAHB and some of the things that we were talking about offline, and some things that you felt were super important to get going here on the show and start. So I'm going to put our first banner up. Home builders are reading the room and they like what they see. Can you jump into this a little bit on what you mean by this?
Sure. When we look at where we stand in the country, you know, with all the uncertainty, and the pandemic has really taken a toll on people in so many ways, so many families, and it's part of your psyche. So when we see the builders looking at what's in front of them, we measure our confidence level, and we're at 78%, which is, you know, the highest it's been. And that's a very good indicator to show, one, how resilient our industry really is, and how, by what we just talked about, working together and the fascinating things that we're able to do, it's just tremendous. but it's a real warm feeling when we look and see that we are, as a group, be able to say that we feel good about our future.
Yeah, for sure. And what do you think is actually driving this interest? What's driving, the renewed interest in home building to get it up to that, 78 percentage points and where it's at an all-time high?
And when you look, there's no question that interest rates have, we're largely affected by interest rates. And so not only where they are today, but just the projection. And that we have the opportunity, we meet with on a regular basis annually. We meet with the Fed to talk about what we see, and they've even quoted us for the last couple of reports, talking with the chairman and what our feelings are and where we think the rate should how helpful they are. And we like the fact stability and keeping them low. And it looks for the near future that we will see interest rates staying steady at a very low. Then you look at everything else, we have people pent up wanting to work, and that's a big thing.
Yeah, and so, well, that's a good thing to elaborate. People, pent up, wanting to work, wanting to get out of their homes. I mean, I think it's a big thing, and this could be a good shift for our industry, people wanting to get back to work, because like Judy was just saying, there's so many jobs right now. There's that opportunity to get out there and work for a living and help. Yeah, and definitely help. So I agree with you. So with that, right, our housing production was up 22.6%. So all of this is kind of driving towards the same conversation we've just had, right? We're just having now with the renewed focus. Confidence is at an unmatched high at the moment. So do you see this continuing, this housing production growth?
When we went in, Dave, when we first started talking, it was like February, March, and we saw good things happening. For example, in New England, for the first time in quite some time, we were seeing some corrective measures starting to take place. But, when you look at July and you see the seasonally adjusted rates of home building, we're up at about 1.5 million units being built this year. And that's significant, because year over year, even with what's going on, is pointing positively in the right direction. Many of our economic rebounds in the past have been led by our industry, home building industry. And there's no question that the leaders are starting to look at home building as being one of those areas that's going to have to get us through these pandemic scares and the reality of what the world really is today.
Yeah, and it has. I haven't spoken to a single builder, offsite or traditional, right now that is not just busier than they ever have been. But now we have a renewed, issue that has come up, and that's with this lumber price jump. Yeah. And what's driving this lumber price jump. And I know that has to be a huge topic of conversation. I mean, it's up over 125%. What are you guys looking at the NAHB, and what are your thoughts on this?
So we've seen it once before, and we created somewhat of a roadmap. How we talk to the right people. We start with the White House. We talk to the cabinet members, and we go through it, and we attack it as many ways as possible. Because right now, since April, we're looking at that 125% jump. So as early as this morning, Dave and I told you how we need to be updated on this daily, certainly, but at some points almost by the hour. One, because of the progress we have to make to fight this. But let me put it in a little bit of perspective here. So if you even look between August 17th and the 22nd, all right, so we look there, the average price that builders are paying for lumber for a single family home is increased from between $17,000 to over $30,000 across the country per unit Think about that. So you have a signed contract that you have to deliver for X dollars, and here comes an increase that you didn't foresee. There was no way to really see this coming. The lumber companies, for a lot of reasons, we've got to look at that treaty with Canada again. We have a lot of work to do on this, and we can't leave it there because multifamily units, they've increased $6,000 to $11,000 per unit. I mean, this is nuts. And what happens, you really want to know, okay, poor builders, poor, the multifamily sector, that's unfortunately, hey, but they can afford it. Here's what happens. We have no choice but to pass it on to the cost of what we're producing. And the average price now is over $16,000 more as we build in these lumber increases. So some of it, yes, builders are going to absorb, but when you look at it, $6,000 per apartment unit, that's scary, Dave. And that's why we as a federation, associates, builders, we all have to work together to really see what we have in front of us and how we can correct this right now before we take one of the few positives during this pandemic and we just water it.
All right. Sorry, you cut out there in the last, and just do what? Water it?
What do we want to do? Water it down at this crucial time where we see it really being uplifting? You saw the percentage increase, and here we are. We're facing these astronomical lumber prices. It's not, and materials in general, we've been trying to work with and fight. And some of the tariffs, for example, add to those are certainly headwinds. But something like this is rolling a grenade into the room is really what it amounts to.
Sure. And what do you think is going to happen? I mean, if you had a magic ball, is it going to slow down the production of housing? I mean, it's obviously supply and demand. If we don't have it, it slows it down. When do you think we're going to see the effects of that?
Well, remember what we talked about, Dave, about we started the year, say, 1 million homes behind, right? We talked about this last show. So if we build upon that, the demand's there. People need homes, apartment units. They need to do their remodeling, for example. There's a lot. Renovations are key. There's a lot going on that is going to bring this to a head. Because, Commissioner Ross, for example, last time we talked to Treasurer Mnuchin, all the cabinet members, Dr. Carson's with us. Everybody sees that if we don't get this under control, they can't afford what the country can't afford, what the consequences would be. So my prediction is that through our hard work, and even as we're on this show, there's calls and meetings going on, and they will not stop until we get our members in a better position. But we'll get our arms around this. But like any of these issues, we've seen so many times, there is a cost that we pay while these factors are dragging us down.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you know what? Talking to all the builders, even with the lumber prices so high, they're still taking in new homes. They're still taking in new contracts. They're still moving this forward. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. But it's also, I think, very important. Everybody understands this is what the NAHB does. This is what the associate members do. And I this isn't a big tout shout out for the NAHB, but this is truly where the value of being a member comes in, because you guys are really you're out there fighting this and figuring it out, because we need lumber if we're building, right? Unless you're in the steel world. So let's take a quick, George put a comment up here. I want to read it. It's going to cover our faces. He likes to write books. So George, in a lumber versus steel building component study that I authored a couple years ago, lumber was historically low by an average of 1%, but steel didn't fluctuate as much. In the end, the recommendation was to offer both building styles as an offset against the escalating market conditions for either medium. I think that's an interesting way to put it. I mean, what is your thoughts on that? Because steel is also another factor we can go to.
Yeah, you know, and that's the risk in my mind. I think George has hit it right on the head, because when you force us to, our industry is resilient, creative, and we will not stand by and be taken advantage of. So what's going to happen is that equation is going to come right back front and center and be analyzed. If it makes sense that the numbers work for steel in residential as well as commercial, you will see, you see it with fuel types, for example, right? For how are you going to heat? Are you going to use gas? Are you going to use oil? Are you going to use electric? And you see these types of free market balancing equations taking place. Well, you're right. If you're going to, at will, now this is the second time we've seen these unfair lumber prices escalate. And shame on us if we're going to allow this as a pattern, while everybody else is trying to make it through this pandemic and balance and be fair about it. Look at we're doing things like allowing people to withhold their rent, which is very dangerous because our landlords also have to pay their bills. So we're trying to all work together. And then you're gonna have 125% lumber increase.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, we have another comment that came in. Let's take a look at this. Andrew Seeley says, wouldn't we expect a variety of pricing instability in many materials and other supply chains during the next few years? Seems hard to avoid. Resiliency needs to be part of the solution.
Yeah. Andrew, that also hits it right on the head, because, and this is what we talk about a lot, Dave, even offline, there is no question that everybody is trying to figure out how to stay mainstream, stay in the focus, and be a product that is in demand in our industry as well as commercial building. What happens is that you hold your prices as long as you can, and you try to be as marketable as you possibly can. But you also have labor bills. You also have delivery costs. There's many things that you have to build into your pricing structure. So at the end of the day, if it means existence, or forget about, people assume incredible profitability. Let's talk about a fair profit in feeding your family and moving along. There's many parts of our industry out there that are doing the tough math, trying to stay competitive while controlling costs. But Andrew raises a good point. At some point, you could see spikes. We see it in the cement piece of concrete delivery and all of that. We see it in a lot of the fuel-based components to the products that we put in homes. And it's hard to predict. Our economists, our economics team is second to none, and Dr. Rob Dietz is just super. In fact, we'll include him on one of these updates as well. But it's fascinating when we try to get ahead of these things, because we have so many wheels moving all the time, trying to get a handle on what the indicators are showing us.
Yeah, for sure. All right, everybody, listen, if you're joining us, now's the time to ask your questions and put your comments out there. We have Greg Ugalde, the immediate past chair of the NAHB, on with us right now. And we are talking right now about the economy, but several other things to include. We're going to give an update on where we're at with IBS at the end of the show as well for this year in Orlando. All right, so Greg, let's keeping this moving along. Let's talk about the balance for buyers in all this, right? The steep cost increases versus seek it out housing and lower density, less expensive markets and so forth. What is kind of your thoughts on lower density suburbs and exurbs?
I think where this started and where we're seeing signs of it all over the country, was in New York City. They were hit so hard right at the outset. And their governor did a great job, Governor Cuomo, who I was with shortly before this whole thing sunk in. A bunch of the governors were together and we were all talking. They never foresaw this issue. But what's happened is that the higher density urban areas, there's a lot of families that are now looking at, geez, what's our future going to be like if we stay packed in like this? Maybe we should look at the lower density areas. Maybe we should look at moving away from the urban areas. And we're seeing a lot of that. When you look at some of our key growth spots in New England, when you look, New York is sharing a lot of their families with us. Who knows what it will look like? Does it mean you keep a small apartment in the city rather than live there? It's a great place. It really is the center of life as we know it. There's so many great things about the city, but this pandemic is forcing people to look at and evaluate where they want to be in the future. Wouldn't it be nice to sit out in your backyard around a pool and take your mask off? Those are the kinds of things people are looking at. And by the contracts in rental units that we're seeing people coming out and taking advantage of, we can see that that's a movement across the country that won't stop anytime soon.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of that in a lot of our conversations as well. The rental market's really picking up and people moving out of the cities. And I think that's just a natural reaction. I mean, it's happened several times in the past. September 11th, New York saw a big shift for a while. And I do think everything ebbs and flows. My grandfather taught me years ago that history repeats itself in some form or another in a lot of instances and when things happen. So, but again, we already have a shortage in housing. Does this add to that? People moving out of the cities and having enough housing for people to move, further out away from the big metropolitan areas, do you think?
Yeah, that's a great point because I always think that there's going to be demand in the city. Maybe it just opens up a new opportunity for people that have always wanted to live in the city and couldn't afford it, or there was just simply no space for them to move into. So let's just say that the bigger cities have their own attraction and they'll be okay. But you raise a good point because we are fighting to keep up with demand. We've been talking about the couch surfers and the students that come home and the multi-generational living that goes on all the time in our homes and in even rental units. So yes, I think that, and that's probably why, remember we talked about builders reading the room? That's probably why we all look and say, we're going to be needed for sure. I mean, we have to address this issue going forward. And that means that there's always going to be a housing demand.
Yeah, no, agree. So on this subject, Jennifer actually just put up a question for you. Greg, is there any talk of code changes as it relates to ventilation and fresh air in healthy homes in the wake of COVID? Are you guys hearing anything on your end that's pushing towards this?
It's so funny, Jen, it's almost like this was a plant. I actually am the co-chair of our Codes Affordability Task Force. And we meet often now because we're looking at the whole codes process and energy efficiency, resiliency, and that this whole post-COVID space is really being reviewed because it does have impact on it. One of the things about codes that I find quite extraordinary, actually, is that manufacturers and the people with the knowledge are allowed to have almost a disproportional voice in bringing products forward. And what I mean by that is when you look at lobbyists, everybody's required to register and really lay out what they stand for, who they are, and where they come from in front of everybody. It's got to be public information. Codes, you can jump in line if you're the inventor of a product and stand to gain a gazillion dollars. You can still. So what you have to do is sort through all of that. But the beauty of it is that it really creates a lot of innovation and a lot of creativity. And I think that we're seeing that in the codes. The one thing about codes too is it takes a while for it to cook. You know, it's you talk and you move along, but it's definitely part of the plotting theories now.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that is a really big point, because there is this big push right now for healthier homes, right? Because of COVID. So that was a great question in regards to, because it's coming up all over, you know, with all the ventilation companies, all the mechanical MEP companies out there are really taking a look at how they do some of this stuff. My goodness, Greg, it's 58 minutes already. Holy mackerel.
Wow. You say this all the time, and I never believe it, but it goes like that.
It does go like that. So why don't we jump into some other just some updates for those of us that have been joining us today. What is going to be the status for IBS 2021 this year? Where are we at with that today?
So our task force, our IBS task force, still meets on a regular basis, at least every other week, sometimes more often. We have the matrix of 10 to 15 items that we look at, either a green, yellow, or red light on, everything from the hotels to working with the local government to air travel to getting people back and forth from the hotels to the convention center. Our ability to get together for what Judy and I were talking about, our awards, all the dinners we have, but also a big part of it is our education. We pack education rooms where there's only seating along the walls and in the back, and every seat is full. There's a lot of considerations that we have to build in. As of right now, we don't have the firm decision. Basically, we're waiting till we can get as much information as we can, because how volatile this review process is. It changes. You know, today you hear more colleges now that their gatherings have had bad results, and we need to watch all of that. Every trade show has been shut down, so we don't even have examples of how it could be handled. I'll give you an example. Taking people's temperature before they enter, all sorts of nightmares, you know, to go along with that. We did move on our fall meeting, our fall board meeting, which has, you know, I explained before, like 200 additional meetings that are involved as part of our overall leadership council meeting to end the week. But we did move virtual for that. So the one thing that I can tell you about IBS is that there's no question that there's so many people that would love to get face-to-face again and have some type of experience, our exhibitors and our members. So we are trying to weigh everything right up until we need to make that final decision. We are, however, preparing for a heavy dose of virtual. So we know that we have to improve our ability because it's astronomical. And I'm talking about even if we, you know, you're there live, there's chances because of the crowd restrictions and the number of people that we can have at certain events that you might actually have to be on site watching virtually. So there's all sorts of complications, but we have to get ahead of that. And those are the things that we're working on as we speak. So I think that there's a lot more information on that to come. I wish I did have a crystal ball and an answer, but I think like so many of us, we watch the big convention and trade show operators, you know, the big companies that do that. Yeah. And we will keep giving updates, Dave. That's the best we can do.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I know everybody's itching to get out, but again, it has to be in a safe way. We don't want to help the reoccurrence of this pandemic by any stretch of the imagination. I think that's super important. And if anybody likes people, it's me. I'm dying to get out there and do some more face-to-face interviews, you know. So, but hey, we have this as well, Greg. And also, listen, for those of you, we have Building Systems Week coming up September 21st through the 25th. Yeah. Through the NAHB, and I've been fortunate enough to be asked to be the master of ceremonies for that. So that's in the ticker below. And the important thing with this is it's free. It is free to register. So register for the event. We have a lineup of great speakers. We're going to keep it entertaining. It's going to be fun, and you're going to learn something. And that's what